How many know what life without the possibility of parole means? It means that you're not going to have a parole hearing, right? That means you don't get to go to the board. That means that essentially you're given a death sentence without being given a death sentence, correct? Well, several years ago, California legislature passed a law that is titled Senate Bill 394. Senate Bill 394 allows a juvenile who's been sentenced to life without the possibility of parole to be able to go to the parole board after his 25th year, his or her 25th year of incarceration. How many people believe that it's also difficult to go 26 years in prison without a single write-up? 16 of those years were on a GP level 4. Yes?
Yep.
Nearly impossible, right? So our next speaker, who was also my cellmate for 5 years at Calipatria State Prison level 4, is going to share with you a little bit about his story and how he was able to come home and is the first juvenile life without the possibility of parole inmate in the state of California under SB 394 to go to his parole board hearing as a life without parole inmate and be found suitable in the state of California. I'd like to welcome Mr. Leif Taylor.
Good afternoon, everyone. It truly is an honor to be here, a blessing. Every day I wake up, I look in the mirror, and it's a miracle. For myself, just to realize that, hey, it's a reality now. It's no longer a nightmare. Robert talked earlier about it's never too late to teach an old dog new tricks. Well, I think the opposite is true as well. It's never too soon to teach a new dog new tricks. And the reason I say that is because my rehabilitation started early on. Even though I was way too young to understand, what was going on in the process and everything, I knew that my actions had led to my arrest. And I'll get into that in a minute. But it was something that sitting in the holding tank really bothered me. We also talked about connecting the dots, getting insight, understanding what made it okay for us to make the decisions that we made in life. And for me, that was very important. One of the things too, I'm gonna jump into my childhood real quick and just kind of share a little bit of the insight that I gained into what the board and a lot of people refer to as your causative factors. It's basically the events that occurred in your childhood or in your life that influence your terrible decision making. And for mine, it started at the age of 5 when I first realized my father was not in the home. Immediately I thought it was my fault. I must have done something wrong. He doesn't love me, and he didn't want nothing to do with me. And that didn't sit so well with a 5-year-old. Obviously, I blame myself. Well, I tried to turn to my mom for the love and acceptance that I was wanting. I wanted reassurance that, hey, we love you. You're welcome. You're our son. You're my son. My brother. You're my little brother. I love you. And I didn't get it. My mom was an alcoholic, so she drank almost on a daily basis. And oftentimes she would leave me with strangers so she could go out and get drunk. And when this would occur, oftentimes it was with strangers. I didn't want to be there. Sometimes it'd be for a day or two. And it made me wonder if she was going to come back for me like my dad never came back. And so it basically reassured and reaffirmed my feelings of rejection. There was a lot of feelings of abandonment there. And all these were feelings that I couldn't process as a child. It made me feel like crap. We moved a lot. My mom, I think I counted, we lived in California 3 times. We lived in Ohio twice, Kentucky once, Wyoming once, Colorado once. And within these states, we moved multiple times. So every time I went to a school and I met new friends, we were moving again. And it just continued to, I developed a lot of resentment towards my mom for her drinking. I felt like she didn't care about me. She didn't care about my feelings. And I lived like this for the first 14 years of my life. School was another thing. Because of the constant moving, there was no stability in the home. And one day I went to class. It was my first day of school. the teacher gave a homework assignment. I went up to let the teacher know I didn't know how to write in cursive, and she yelled at me in front of the whole class. I said, "What the hell you mean you don't know how to write in cursive? What are they teaching in California? Go sit down." And I remember I turned around, I went back to my seat with my head down, and I told myself in that moment, I will never ask for help again. And again, I blame my mom. I went home and I looked at her and it's your fault. It's your fault that I'm constantly going through all these things. And I bottled all this up for a long time. Because of her alcoholism and, she became real violent when she got drunk. She could never hold a relationship down. She had multiple boyfriends. And I remember at the age of 14, we were living with one of her boyfriends at this time. And none of her boyfriends ever acted as a father figure. They never spent time with me. It was about her going out and them having a good time, and that was it. But I remember them fighting and arguing, a lot of domestic violence in the home. He told my mom, "You know what, I'm tired of your drinking, get your son and get the hell out." And at that point, we moved and we found a place in a very bad area. It was crime infested, it was gang infested. I've seen stuff that no child or teenager should ever have to see. As far as the violence goes. And it was during this time, I remember my older brother, he's 9 years older than me, he moved in with us. And up until this point, he had always been out of the house. He was never really home. I would see him here and there. Oftentimes he resided in other states. And so I remember thinking to myself, well, my brother's here now. He's going to give me the acceptance. He's going to show attention to me. He's going to, be that positive male role model that I want. And I remember trying to get his attention. I would do things to get his acceptance, but he was a meth addict. All he cared about was getting loaded and hanging out with his friends. And so when that didn't work, I remember telling myself, you know what, I'm done. I fed up. I went out to the neighborhood. I started staying away from home as much as I could and hanging around the neighborhood kids. Being white didn't help. Growing up in a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, I got bullied a lot, I got picked on, and I had to learn how to fight real quick. And I realized very shortly thereafter that violence brings respect. If you want people to respect you, you need to be violent. And this is something that I noticed in the home with my mom and her drinking and the fighting. So I remember I ended up getting into it with the neighborhood bully. I beat him up real bad, and after that, everybody left me alone. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And because I was white, I felt that my actions had to supersede that of my peers in order to fit in. And so when I started getting this acceptance, for the first time in my life, I felt accepted, I felt like wanted. They would actually want to hang out with me, spend time with me. These were things that my own family didn't have time for. And so I quickly latched onto it, and I was willing to do whatever I had to maintain that. I ended up getting involved in gangs. The drive-by shootings were a daily occurrence where I was living. I remember I started losing friends to the violence. Going to their funerals was always difficult at that age, not really, being able to process their death. How was it I was with them yesterday and today they're gone? My criminality began to escalate at that point. I remember at the age of 15, I got shot in the neighborhood walking to the mall with one of my friends. And after that, I went and got a gun. And I carried it with me everywhere I went. I went to school with me, and that's just how I lived my life. I began adopting that belief system, that negative belief system that the gangs instill in you. And I started rationalizing, like the guys were talking about, making my behavior and my actions okay. I need this because if I don't have it, then something's going to happen to me. When it's never okay to have a weapon, and it's never okay to try to hurt somebody. So this was my life from the ages of 14 to 16, and during this time, my mom, she ended up walking out on me at 15. She moved and left. She left me with my brother. He went to jail thereafter, and at 16, I found myself living in an empty house with no electricity, no hot water, no food in the fridge. And it was at this point that my friends told me, look, you need to start looking out for yourself because nobody's going to take care of you. And I was like, all right, I got it. So one of the things we would do is we would go out and we would engage in robberies, and we would steal and try to come up. And we always had a gun with us. And one night in 1993, I went out with 6 of my fellow gang members, and we decided we were going to commit some robberies that night. And it was during that night that we took someone's life. And it's a regret that I have to this day. It bothers me that I made that lifestyle okay. How was I able to justify any of that behavior? And, you know, shortly after my arrest, I was sitting in juvenile hall. And one of the things my mom had always told me, was, these guys are not your friends. They don't care about you. And even in her drunken state, she told me you were going to go to jail one day and it wasn't going to be for something small. And I remember sitting in that holding tank asking myself, how did she know? Like, how did she know? I wanted to go back so badly and just undo everything that had happened. You know, all the damage and harm that I had caused, and, you know, I couldn't. And it was painful. The lady that was booking me into the police station, she was charging me. She told me, sweetie, what happened? She said, you have no record. You have nothing. How do you go from nothing to this? And in that moment, I couldn't answer the question. I did not know how I got from you know, being that teenage child, you know, having all those emotions bottled up to this. It's like, how does that work? And I remember in that moment that I not only needed to know or wanted to know, but I had to. And sitting in juvenile hall, I became very reserved. I would like stay to myself. I wouldn't hang out with all the fellows. And I just would process stuff, my life, my childhood and everything. And I remember I fell on my knees and I cried out to God. And I said, you know what, Lord, I can't do this. I need your help. And I kind of had a peace that just came over me. And I started going to church. I started reading His Word. I started praying more. And little by little, I started getting, you know, a peace. The Bible talks about a peace that surpasses all understanding. And it was like, okay, Lord, I can do this. And like the brother was saying, you know, if this is your will for my life, to remain in here and to serve you, then so be it. And so early on myself, my rehabilitation, my recovery, it was selfish. Because like, when I remember going to my hearing and the commissioners asking me, they're like, you know, you don't have anything in your file. You don't have any disciplinary write-ups. You've got all this self-help. You know, why? And I explained to them that, you know, in the beginning, the rehabilitation was selfish. It was for my selfishness. But in 1999, it became less about me and more about my victim. And they wanted to know more about it. And I was sharing with them how one day I was laying on my bed. And in that moment, you know, I was reflecting at my sentencing hearing, hearing my victim's mother make their impact statement, talking about her son and the things that he did and the things he will no longer be able to do because of the actions of me and all my co-defendants. And it dawned on me that my victim and my brother had the same first name. And in that moment, I asked myself, how would I have felt if that had been my brother that had been murdered? And in that moment, I was able to have empathy. And it hurt because my brother was my world, and he still is. And I don't know what I would have done had I lost him. And so from there, it became more about my victim and my change. And, you know, Robert was mentioning how, you know, I was able to get through my entire term without any write-ups. Well, it's not that I wasn't doing anything wrong or doing anything that I wasn't supposed to, because there were things that I was doing. You know, we get clothing, and oftentimes we have to alter our clothing to fit us because they have these pants that are one size fits all, and they're just way too long for most of the guys. And if you think about it, we're not supposed to be altering that, and we do. You know, we have them tapered so they fit us. There's little things like covering your light. You know, certain prisons, the light stays on all night. And so you put a piece of paper up there just so you guys, you know, it's just so we can sleep at night. And again, it's not permitted because it becomes a security issue. Making clotheslines, all these little things that we would do. You're at work, you want disinfectant to take back to the cell and clean the toilet and stuff, you know. And in my mind, I would rationalize and I would justify it and say, well, look, nobody's getting hurt. What's the big deal? My boss gave it to me. But after I had this moment in 1999, it got me thinking that, you know what? As small as it is, it doesn't matter, because the rules are the rules, just like the laws are the laws. And the moment I start giving myself permission to break one law, then it's going to be easier to give myself permission to break the next law. And that's when we start becoming complacent. And I never wanted to get like that again. And especially living with Robert for 5 years. You could ask him too. And there were times where, you know, I intentionally would not live with people that I knew were doing things they weren't supposed to be doing. If I knew somebody had a cell phone, I'm not going to live with them. You know, if I knew they were holding stuff for other people, I'm not going to move in with them. I just kept my distance. You know, I found people like-minded that were, you know, about recovery, about trying to give back and make a difference. And I just surrounded myself with those types of people. Again, another thing I wanted to touch on too was, you know, making, you know, we talked about insight, connecting the dots, and what made it okay for us to live that type of lifestyle. And it goes back to our beliefs. You know, our beliefs, one of the biggest, and the commissioner asked me this too, he said, you know, he said, Mr. Taylor, could you point to one thing in your recovery that is going to assure this panel that you are not coming back? And right away I said, yeah, absolutely, I got it. And they're like, what is it? And I said, it would be CGA. Because CGA taught me that our belief system, or our beliefs, are what govern our decision making. And in order to change my behavior, I had to change my beliefs. And so I started writing out a list of what my beliefs were at the time. And then I wrote a list of my beliefs today. For example, you know, a lot of, you know, people know the street code. You know, you don't tell. You know, you go with the flow. If something happens, you know, you retaliate. And then I had to start thinking, well, you know what? What are my beliefs today? Well, today I believe in God. Today I believe in education. I believe in giving back. And once I started setting a new set of beliefs, my behavior, those beliefs started governing my behavior, and it became easy. But again, you know, it's not becoming complacent. It's staying on top of your recovery and never losing, you know, for me, every day that I'm out here is a day that my victim doesn't have. My victim's family doesn't get to see their loved one and to hug them in the morning and to, you know, greet them. Instead, they're reminded every day when they wake up and they see his picture on the wall that he's no longer there. And knowing this and understanding empathy and the impact that I created, not just on a family, but on a community, you know, on a city, really helps to maintain my humbleness and my humility. And giving back is just one of the things that I feel compelled to do. And I know, you know, each and every one of you here are here because you love your loved ones are still inside. Your love is unconditional for them. You want them home just like we're home. My advice would be just to, again, you know, stick by their side. Don't give up on them, because at some point that light is going to come on. For me, it came on, you know, from at the beginning of my incarceration. I knew in that moment back then that I never wanted to go down that path again. And even being locked up, life could always get worse. That wasn't the end. It could, you know, and I could, if I could take the energy that I spent destroying communities and turn that around and start building, you know, communities and helping people, then that's what I wanted to do. And one of the commissioners, they talked to me, they commented that, you know, Mr. Taylor, we're going through your file, you have no confidentials, you've got extensive programming, and by the way, having a life without parole sentence, like I was excluded from all programs. Like I had nothing coming. And one of the reasons being is because I didn't have a board date. They told me that they needed that seat for somebody that was going to the board and had a chance to go home. And so, for me, I wouldn't take no for an answer. I found ways to take programs through correspondence courses. I kept going and showing up, you know, for group, just trying to get in, and one day I got in. And from there, it was all downhill. I started sharing, I started learning a lot, and the doors started opening. And when I've written extensively on, you know, just my upbringing and how everything impacted, you know, my decision making. And for me, it's really one of the things that, like, it was probably the best thing that happened in my incarceration. You know, it made me who I am today. And the commissioner commented, he's like, you know, you do realize that you were never going home. And I said, yeah, I understand. And they're like, well, why would you want to change if you're never going home? And I told them, because for me, it was important that I didn't die in prison the same person I went in. And you know, deep inside, I had always had hope. I don't know if my hope was to be home one day, but I know my hope was in Christ. And what he had for my life was much better than what, you know, I had created. And so that alone was enough for me. And so, you know, being here with you guys today, it's really an honor, it's a blessing. And I sincerely hope that there's something that, you know, you guys can take away from this panel today and kind of share with your loved one. And you know, the whole disciplinary free, it is possible. It's hard. It wasn't easy. You know, it was really hard, but I did it. And I'm glad I did it. I'm proud of myself that I was able to, you know, make it. And I'm here today, so thank you guys.